Y todas los que se vienen sumando.
Good morning,
Agradecemos.
everyone, and everybody who are just joined us. Thank you very much for being so punctual. We're going to wait for a couple of minutes so we can add more people to this meeting. Please keep in mind that you will have the option of simultaneous interpreting.
Abajito de su pantalla. Vamos a esperar unos minutos. Remember that this event will have simultaneous translation into Spanish, English, and French. So please select the language in which you wish to listen to the event, clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. Estamos teniendo personas que vienen de Nicaragua, Haití, Guatemala, El Salvador, Granada. Muchas gracias que se vienen
We've got
sumando.
people from Grenada. Thank you very much. And we're going to wait for a couple of minutes so that we can start with it.
Y le vamos a dar inicio en unos segundos.
And we will start in a couple of seconds.
Perfecto. Bueno, nuevamente bienvenidos y bienvenidas a este nuevo.
Once again, welcome to this new workshop. And as you all know, this workshop, just a second, please. It's just that we are joining more and more people. Carmen Matthew from St. Lucia, thank you very much for joining us. And well, this is a workshop that is framed in our cycle of mobilization and the practice of the use of evidence in education. This is the workshop in terms of how we can move forward in translating this data for the educational improvement. And as you all know, this is the fourth or fifth meeting that we've got in this community of practice. And I am Mark Botero, and I'm in charge of the strategy of the community in KIX. And as you all know each other, we have exchanged some areas in other opportunities where we have met. And thank you very much for accepting this invitation. As you all know, this is a more intimate space, and today we've got a representation of the people from the ministry, from evaluation and curriculum, and we wanted this to be a smaller group in their participation because, of course, we want to set having the more interactive conversation with each one of the representative of the countries that you would like to discuss and talk about your experiences and challenges. I told you about the simultaneous interpretation already, and now you can select the language in which you would like to listen to, intervene, and so on. So now you can intervene in your mother tongue. Quickly, I would like to introduce the different teams of the ministry that are here with us today. Some of them excused themselves because they were not able to come, but they gave us the message to tell us that they are paying attention to all the thoughts and everything that we can build in this meeting. We would like to thank the team of UNESCO that are going to be facilitating this, as Carlos Henríquez Calderón. He is working in the JASA Quality of Education in UNESCO, and Francisco Gatica that are going to be leading this conversation. So thank you very much for your generosity, because for sure the contributions that you could do to this into Latin America in the areas of knowledge is going to be very important. I would like to thank the participation of Nicola Vela, a senior specialist and chief of the program of education in Jamaica, who is here with us today, Edmund of AOX, that is here with us as well, and of course, the whole team of SUMMA KIX LAC, and for making this possible. So here we have different ministries and representatives from Honduras, and I'm going to take a look if we've got, well, today we're going to have the General Director for Curriculum and Evaluation, Anissa Rato, Irma Barahona, Carla Leticia Delgado, that is also here. We've got people from El Salvador, among them Juan Carlos Saca, Alex Granado from the National Direction of the Master Plan, and also we've got the national part of teachers' education, and also we would like to thank Guatemala for accepting the invitation, and also we've got an important team from the general area of evaluation. We've got Carlos Fantusa, Eva, Carlos. Thank you very much for being part of this meeting. And we've got the representation of the OIA and Maria Lázaras. Thank you very much for being here. From the team of Nicaragua, they're always very active in these opportunities of participation. And we've got Rosny Peña from the Department of Evaluation, Nora, Ramon, and the representation of the university. Thank you very much for that. And I would like to thank the Haiti team that are part of it. I don't know if you would like to say something. And also they are part of this conversation from Haiti. I don't know if they are listening, if their simultaneous interpretation is being activated. Mr. Abraham Jakes Abraham, if you can please confirm that the interpretation is working. Thank you very much for coming and being part of this conversation. We also have representative from Grenada, St. Vincent, and St. Lucia. From St. Lucia, as I said, we've got Carmelita Matthew. Thank you very much for coming, and she is the head of evaluation and assessment unit. Thank you very much for being part. Charmaine, thank you very much in representation of the Academia Guyana. There is a lot of people. Thank you very much for coming. If you want, you can add in the chat some greetings and just to verify who is being part of it. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Javier González, the director of SUMMA, who is going to be talking about the beginning of this conversation, why it is so important to talk about these learning experiences in the region. So Javier, the floor is yours. So please. Mar, thank you very much, and thanks everybody who are here with us today. I see so many faces and names for the ones who do not have their their camera on. I visit many of the ministries in the agencies of quality. So to take a look at this huge community, which is the KIX community, I would like to thank people from OECS, RTRC, I see Florencio Ceballos, and of course GPE. And as I said, to all of our partners from different ministries, from NGOs, universities, the unions of the different areas that represent this huge KIX community. We feel so proud and somehow give us an opportunity to meet. And I would like to welcome Carlos Henríquez from UNESCO, who once again is going to join us in this cycle. At the beginning of the year, we were with him, with Carlos in this cycle. And who is better than Carlos to talk about these topics? Carlos not only has a very important journey in Chile when he was director of the quality agency. If you're not aware of that, in Chile, we're very thankful for what Carlos did. And of course, from UNESCO, today we're leading the yes set. So the yeser clearly And from the American peoples from the South were able to gather together and work together. I believe that that strength of GISE inspires and also the work of KIX as an opportunity and something additional, another opportunity where we have learned to be together and to cooperate. Thank you, Carlos and UNESCO, for being with us in this one and so many other activities that we do in the region. So the importance, and I don't have to convince anybody because everybody who is here, we know about the evidence and the assessment, not only the summative evaluation, which is something that the pandemic gave us the strength of this when we do this kind of evaluation that is going to contribute, that is going to make observations about the progress of the students. And of course, we have been working in the different ministries that are here today with us. And we know that we have a lot of data that is missing, or it's hard for us to go from the data to the action. That is why and that's why we've got the focus of this meeting, of this workshop here, has to do with that. How do we build better data and how do we go to action? I believe that this is very important to take this into account because many countries, they are moving forward in that line, but to measure the learning experiences have many technical challenges, psychometric ones to build those tests, the different samples of the different samples where we're going to apply this evaluation, whether to show that and to have some samples of certain surveys, or we need to think about the importance and the human capacities, how we're going to get ready as a country to reinforce those teams and the budget as well. Sometimes we need to start with something that is going to be just a sample, but working as well in SIMSE, which is the evaluation system of Chile, from the Ministry of Education here in Chile, but also the importance of this evaluation, of this logic of going from this evaluation to the action would allow us to see which school requires more support, not in a logic of punishment, but we will see which school specifically will require, and in terms of what do they need in terms of the educational gap that we've got. So not only is necessary in this area, but I believe that we need to have this sort of test that in each school we are guaranteeing this access to education. So something else is how those tests are not absolute, in a way how we can have a context and what's happening in some countries, not only with those tests, but also the indicators in general, is that so many countries they don't have good information about the economic aspects. We've got gender, rurality, but we may think that one will explain that this is going to explain in terms of the educational background that the different families may have is the socioeconomical aspect. It is important of a student saying that this school is doing this right or wrong. So how are we doing this regarding the group that they are covering, how effective it is regarding that group? So I don't want this to understand if someone is poor, they will expect to learn less. No, the idea is to have a context and to support those group in a better way. And that's why I'm going to go to the third point, which is the area about how do we act. So many times the countries will be more robust, or they may have an RRT methodology or even more advanced. And then those are census evaluation and they've got a context in this. And how do we go to the action? How do we report this to the ministers, to the technical teams in a different division. I think that is not automatic, and also we're requiring important effort to customize how do we understand this, and that's why so many countries they will test from the simple score of a test to give a level of achievement, a certain standard that would allow me to understand in a better way what a children can do according to a certain standard, a certain level, or having a certain level of achievement. So with that, we're going to have a certain importance to the test to say that this one is better than the other one, has 3 more points or less. So that's what's important and how we can support this. And simply, we just want to reinforce what we are doing and to see the supervision and sometimes we've got a pedagogical support, but we need to see how we're going to support from the state and the job that the schools are doing on a daily basis. How can we support them? And unfortunately, in Latin America today, basically this is given by supervisors or a consultant with 3, 2, or a maximum of 40 visits per year, which is something that is totally insufficient to support a pedagogical change and to support the work of teachers. So this is a call for everybody from the ministry to pay attention, to measure this learning experience. How do we move forward for this to change? And one way is through an effective pedagogy that can be nested in schools in the way that we will put them in practice, we model them, and we will put it by different supervisors and consultants. So I just want to mention that because I believe that one of the loose links in our verticality between the central ministry and schools, and normally that regional part of the district part is totally weakness in our governance. So that is a call on that regard. So without a further ado, thank you very much everybody, and I would like to congratulate you for keeping this instance alive of KIX and of everything that we do with our partners. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day. I really wish you a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier, for raising up those relevant points in this conversation. Now we will give the word to Carlos Henríquez. He's talking about the evaluation. He has a master's in public he's also an engineer he's also his degrees from Santiago de Chile, and he has 2 decades. He has been working in education area in different levels. And he has also been in responsibilities in public and university environments. And now he is the coordinator of the laboratory that we have of the evaluation of equality. Carlos, welcome. Also, he will also be with us during his presentation. We'll have Francisco Gatica, who's a specialist in evaluation of laboratories. So Carlos, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mar, and thank you to the community, SUMMA, to KIX, and the member countries who are also a part of this laboratory, the Caribbean, who we apologize because we have not always worked with them. There's always a conversation that is pending there. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to contribute to the conversation of how we go forward and that the evaluation can help have a better learning from our laboratory to this KIX community. That thanks to your invitation, we are getting to know. I would like to insist, we hope to contribute and to be able to get to know more regarding your work. What I am going to speak or try to contribute regarding today, what Javier was saying so well, is how can we build a better data and how can we go from data to action? There's 4 modules that we are going to be working on. I am going to be presenting and with Mad regarding the technology that we can have experience of getting to know briefly and being able to open the conversation has this objective that you may get to know how we do LLECE and how we do this in the complications going from data to action. And I would just like to say I insist we are going to see how the laboratory and its main process, which is curriculum analysis, and also thinking that you might get to know that. And after that, we will see the processes and the design of the different instruments. And third, maybe there we will look up a little bit and how we use this in macro and micro levels and what evidence exists. And regarding the question Javier had said, so if we only produce information, are we not capable of using it for the conversation of improvement? And also one of the elements that we think is key in a laboratory work, it has to do with the countries and the development of abilities. And we understand that you are a community who has member countries from the ES and others from the Caribbean who are not. And I would like to have two objectives for this session that you might have in mind. Those of you who are members like El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, for example, for the colleagues who already know about this, it's to be able to review what we have done and try to reflect on how we can improve and how we can use the different opportunities, and obviously think about how we can finally improve our cycle. I hope I can contribute. Colleagues, you already know many things, but have that reflection, that time of reflection. And the colleagues from other institutions, Grenada, St. Lucia, and other countries, Haiti and other countries, and KIX and other colleagues that are investigators or researchers, that you might get to know our processes more, some characteristics, and also this transit that we have had for 30 years that we have carried out. Now, briefly, you know that this is the instance of cooperation that is the oldest one. It is 30 years. It is before PISA. And from what Javier said, I would also like to say that our region of Latin America and the Caribbean has a lot to improve, but there are also things that have been built in a permanent way. And this is an asset that is led by UNESCO, but also built with 19 countries that speak Spanish, plus Brazil, to be able to have information and have them in service of improvement. And now we are in the 5th study. It starts with Percy, Circe, Tercy, and then it couldn't be Corsi. So the others had those same letters, but it is a version of the 5th study that has to do with 2025. And what has us very happy is that we have been capable of building a transit. And I would like to briefly say this has been a little bit the characteristics of the central term. I would like to say first, you have a curriculum that is common in the region. Different from other assessments, it's not an external framework, but it is a framework that is built with the countries. That is why I'm going to stop in this first part, having to do with this curricular framework. And first, it builds capabilities. What does that mean? That it is not only that the countries participate, Nora, or Edgar, Alana, and many know about this, but with their colleagues, they can participate so that they can implement in the end in their countries the different processes. And third, it is not just an assessment, but even in its time, and this is thanks to many who were before us, who said it's not only having an evaluation, but how to understand what is happening to be able to improve. Many times there are many inequality in our region, but there are things that the educational systems could influence in a more direct way. And that is why we have context questionnaires. We are the only assessment in writing regarding this assessment that before the pandemic, we decided in social emotional abilities. And in this area, we are also wanting to include the curriculum of social development and other areas as well. This is a transit of 30 years of work, of building. And today, I apologize that in spite that we have not worked with our colleagues from the Caribbean, we hope we can be able to talk and open this opportunity. I apologize because you have not been a part of this during these 30 years, but with all of the other Spanish-speaking countries plus Brazil, and also there were a few missing in the last version, but today they are all except for Mexico, who is in Nuevo León, one of the states, but not the whole country. So this is an asset. So the first minutes, I just wanted you to know where I am going to try to contribute from in this conversation. And I insist for those who know us and work with us, and for those who are from other countries. And I would just like to thank you as well in that line. The first module has to do with the ERCE, the LLECE laboratory, which has to do with the analysis of the ERCE. This is a process of a cycle of 5 years of our assessment that starts with curricular analysis. And this analysis is the central, what is used to elaborate instruments. It is not an external framework, but it is a framework that is going in for the common curriculum, and we also use samples. This is not like a census, this is a representative sample of the schools that is one of the areas that we work in. And then we have the operation, that is the pilot, to be able to try the different instruments. And then we end with the pilots, and we are now ending the pilots in the different countries to be able to get into the analysis and to start to build the definite evaluation or assessment, and then have the adjustments for the next year for the end of the first semester, so that we can apply them first in the northern calendar and then in the southern calendar, ERCE 2025, to then be able to work with the analysis of the evaluation or assessment, so we can have the results at the end of 2026. This is our cycle in terms of the different components. I'm going to enter into the second module into a little bit more detail with what has to do with what each of these do. But I would like to stop here for a second in a characteristic that we have that is not an external framework, but a curriculum, an analysis of the curriculum, to have shared curriculum. This has 2 objectives. One, that it is the raw material for the table of the specifications that then is mapped and defines based on what knowledge the items are built on. So that is the first objective and the largest one. But also, we have seen in the last versions, we have incorporated, have a vision of the curriculum to generate a debate and how to allow this curriculum to be more effective. And also regarding what Javier was saying regarding data, curriculum, instruments, and to be able to develop better learning. So the methodology that we are using to be able to do this is to map a series of documents in each one of the countries based on certain criteria that is used to define what we are going to do in every one of the countries. So what do we define? We have the curricular content that are differentiated by grade and area. For example, 3rd and 6th grade reading, math. We have the conceptual elements and also abilities, and also to have learning objectives, competencies, or similar, mostly having to do with codification that later on can be reviewed. And also we review the version that is the most recent one. And 9 of the 19 countries that presented the document for ERCE 2025 had new changes, new documents. It was not the same as previously, so we review the last in that direction. And seeing this methodologies, the main objective of this curricular analysis is to be able to get to know if there are changes or not regarding that table of specifications that we built and that we need to maintain in a comparable way. First, we carry out a qualitative stage where we explore the presence of these domain and indicators, cognitive processes or specific indicators. You have like math, and science, and language, where we can review this in each one of the curriculums to be able to see in each country and have a view from each country that is integrated and validated, and also a quantitative stage, the frequency, to then be able to build the specification table under those things that are more in common. If you see all of this after the qualitative logic regarding this qualitative and then quantitative logic to be able to code regarding these categories that were emerging from the previous analysis, we have math, science, we also have domains, math, science, reading and writing. So we have 5, and we also have cognitive processes, which are 3. And in the case of writing, due to its particularities and the way we have been getting information, we have been doing it through indicators. Not all of the dominions or domains are assessed, especially regarding codification in reading, but they are all raised in this process of curricular analysis. Here is an example so that you can just have it in terms of this iteration that we raise regarding a document and the nomenclature and the axis and the degree, the amount of pages, evidence, to see if it's coded and to see if it's in the cognitive process 1, 2, or 3. And also in each one of the domains or processes, the cognitive processes that have been carried out. And to end this stage, where I insist that I was saying previously, this analysis of frequency is reviewed in terms of each one of the countries, and we carry out a convergence analysis. We are never going to have 100% convergence in all curriculum, but we do carry out a technical analysis. We have a technical committee, and then the assembly of the countries that was decided in previous versions. So our degree of convergence has to do with 70%. What does this mean? That the 70% defines certain, as I was saying previously, certain domains and cognitive processes to be able to build a table of specifications and in what is mostly in each one of the countries. So what does this mean? And I make a short parenthesis that there has been a study in the statistics area that shows the more global competencies that the Agenda 2030 presents. But also the good thing about this is that for the countries, their specific particularities give space for this, and obviously allows us to have this curriculum in common that is raised up to build our evaluation and assessment. Also, the information, there are cases in some countries that are under this convergence, and we hope that this information that we give them can help them in terms of being able to look at this information. And so this is the first part that we would like to look at. There is a review of this division, domain, indicators, cognitive processes. There are periodic meetings of calibration to be able to make it more robust, and also double coding. And I would just like to insist to be able to close this module. This information is raised up for each one of the countries. And the language of coding, and it's to be able to assess, to some say, and we also give them information regarding, in this case, this is the average from the region of decoding in the 3rd degree. You can also see it in 11% and only 4%, and you can see that it is growing in what has to do with 6th grade, to be able to say this presence for the reflection. And also this can be compared for the countries in terms of what it has to do with their presence in this information and versus the regional average. The same is for math. They are all evaluated or assessed: geometry, magnitudes, measurements, numbers and operations, the statistics and probabilities, numbers and operations, and the same. We are able to be raise this information. Due to time, I'm just going to say real quick why, if our students are not capable of responding a text in 3rd grade, is there so little work of coding in 3rd grade? And that is what some researchers have stated. And second, the low differentiation in the presence of these contents having to do with this progression in between third and sixth grade. This allows us to reflect, which our new purpose, being that the initial purpose is to raise information for this curriculum and comment on the table of specifications, but this also allows reflection so that we can have an effective curriculum that can be adequate for the learning of the students. Therefore, to be able to go over this once again, the analysis of convergence facilitates this common criteria that allows, and I insist, to facilitate, and it is something for the group of countries. And second, that we know there's a diversity, and we hope to be able to publish at the beginning of 2026 the analysis, which is the base for this new study. And this is also iterated with the specialists of each country. So this is something that demands work on their side, and that finally is going to help us generate this evidence. And also, this curricular analysis allows us to interpret with higher validity in the curriculum, higher validity, and also more adhesion from the faculty, because it is something that has to be taught and not something external that has to be defined in each one of them. So to just close up, these are the publications in the past, and we hope that 2026 we can have the new studies, the new results. So I would like to end here in this part that generates this. And then we will go to the processes of everything that has to do with ERCE, which is our regional study. That is the main one. Thank you very much, Carlos. We would also like to let you know, and in this case, he does an introduction of these factors that are enablers. And we would also like to invite a country from that is present that could share their experience with this. How is this translated in practical terms in the territory? You who are the protagonists of this processes, maybe El Salvador or Guatemala, or maybe even the team, EDMU, who has experience in this convergence of a curriculum. Could you share with us what has your main challenges been, or what are those challenges to be able to have this alignment with the curriculum, and precisely to ensure that the assessments can be relevant, effective, and to measure the learning objectives? I don't know if maybe would like to share with us their experience in your country at this time.
Los escucho.
I hear you if you want to share something. Hi, good morning. Good morning, Georgina. Welcome from Guatemala, right? That's correct. Yes. Well, to be honest, the Jessup for us has been a school where we are learning the processes with the training that they provide us, and also about what we were asking about the challenges. Well, Guatemala haven't changed its curriculum, but if we check once again all the information that is sent and that we collect, and we see the different phases, so there is something that is committed to do a follow-up. And that has also been a challenge because the team is working with other national tests, and we have been working in different processes, regional and international ones. This is a challenge for the organization. Thank you, Georgina. It is very important what you're saying. Alex from El Salvador, you've got a lot of experience in this analysis of the curriculum and in this convergency. Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. It is a pleasure to hear you all. And we've got a team of El Salvador in this meeting, so thank you for that. I just want to make a general comment. More than participating in the team of El Salvador, we, as you all know, we have had a curriculum change that has been very important. We started a little bit before the pandemic, but then with the pandemic, we were not able to consolidate this change. We made some changes in math that we started before the pandemic. We had a measurement before the pandemic, and we were working with a Japanese organization, and we've got some positive results. We were able to have some evidence that the strategy that was centered in the quality materials, the effective time of active work of learning, and then the best practices of the teacher with the students. Those are the three components, and we were consolidating it more and more in math. So with the pandemic made us to do some important changes, and in spite of that, the results in 2019, we started quite early to think that those will be reflected in the results that we've got. So how can we achieve that the educational times will be part of the political times? And you know how complex that is. And of course, that is a challenge that we can consolidate with a strategy. But in this aspect, we can consolidate the strategy even though of the problems that the pandemic has brought, because at a certain point, then we were centering some other aspect, the social emotional ones, how to have a direct contact with the students and not going deeper in some learning experience that were really needed, especially in the primary education. Now we're taking the strategy once again. This is the second year in a row that we've got pretty much classes every day face to face. We're using some other digital tools, and of course the textbooks and the workbooks. In the case of language, it was a huge challenge because we didn't renew the program, the curriculum that, or our syllabus had to do with the amount of information. It was quite extensive, and they were not coherent with the times that the teacher had to work with the students. And also it was centered on the teachers more than the students. And so with this curriculum reform has to do with the learning experience of the students more than the mediation with the students. So we've got a different materials in the schools, in the timings of the management that we need to do in order to have this active learning experience. So we had to do the changes with when the pandemic was happening. And there were some aspect that has to do with the writing and reading, and we've got a certain discretion with the teachers. It was not only one process with additional resources so that teachers can reinforce these processes in a systematic manner. So the previous curriculum that we used to have, which was from 2008, somehow because of the needs of a globalized approach, we had a dilution of this process, and we didn't have certain milestone in times and for the students and teachers to start doing measurement as close as possible to what the children were achieving. So that is the information that we've got. For us, it was a very important, and during this year we had a priority in the initial uh, teaching of the reading and writing, because of the literacy, because we've got some problems with all those skills that the students need. So we want to do it in a coherent manner in the schools so that the teachers will have a better understanding, and then we can have more and more data that will have a feedback in the evaluation teams. Really help us with a diagnosis evaluation, which are universal for each, pretty much each level of education, but still we need to have teachers that will take a better use of that information. And there are some platforms that we're using for promoting the reading and writing, and more we need to have more exercises for the students to be more fluent, and also to improve the diagnosis evaluation, and we can do this in a better way. So Alex, thank you very much. I am convinced that many people who are here, they are identified with the challenges that you're mentioning. I'm going to give the floor to Gladys and Nora from Nicaragua. And also, I would like to invite the countries of the Caribbean because we know that they've got some similar challenges in the convergence of the curriculum. So please let us know from your own territories what are your experiences. Gladys, Nora, please, if you could tell me a little bit of what's happening in your countries. Well, thank you very much, Gladys Bolaño from the Department of Evaluation in El Salvador. I just want to share the experience that we have had with the laboratory. I would like to, I share my opinion with Georgina because what has it meant for our country to be part of this study, but specifically what Carlos just mentioned in terms of the curriculum, to feel that we are identified in this evaluation because in this meeting of discussion with each country, somehow they want to be represented in this evaluation. We want to be represented in this evaluation because that is going to guarantee that the information that comes from study, this is going to be used. So with the richness that the laboratory has and the LLECE, and also how the pandemic in the end allow us to see once again what the engineer Granados is saying is that maybe the result of 2019, which is the evaluation based on the laboratory, will give us a certain information, but then the information that we will obtain later on is going to be richer. And how we saw this in this 2019 and also in 2025, we will have more information from the country. So this work that all national coordinators, I was in this conversation, but I know this conversation, but everything that comes from the 19 participating countries is adding something to what each country is doing. So with the result of the study that is organized by the laboratory with the results given by the evaluation of the countries in the end, and that will give us a richer information of what's happening in those countries and also to overcome all the difficulties that we have seen. Well, Nora, it's a pleasure to have you. Good morning, my dear colleagues. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and this allows us to share these experiences. And as Gladys said, what we're doing. Well, to be honest, to talk about the importance of ESF for our Ministry of Education, I think Nora is having some problems with her connection. Let's see if this can work. Otherwise, I would like to invite the countries of the Caribbean if they've got experience in this topic. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about when we look for the curriculum adequation for the different processes of assessment that they implement. Let's see if we've got someone, or if Nora can come back, or otherwise we can go to the next model. I think that we don't have Nora, but we can resume with her later on. Carlos, maybe we can continue with the next part of the conversation. Well, thank you very much. I think that by knowing the experience of Nora in Nicaragua, I believe that this is a huge challenge. Hopefully, she will reinforce this idea that has to do how the national evaluation will have a conversation with the planning, with the support that the Ministry of Education is doing. So I think that there is a huge challenge, and also to value what professor from El Salvador, Alex and Gladys, are saying, that hopefully the curriculum changes will take a look at the difference in the region, or children in the regions that are below what is expected, and how we can have a progress that requires to have a differentiation. So thank you very much for the big contribution on that regard. I don't know if you can see the presentation number 2 of the model number 2. Okay, now we will go to the second model, and this one has to do with the processes of ERCE 2025. We will see the design of instrument and implementation of evaluation. Once again, this is something that is discussed in many days with the national teams to transfer information about the particularities. But right now, I would just try to give you an idea, and hopefully this is going to be of certain significance for our colleagues. We've got an evaluation at any level, but when we talk about this in Latin America, this is on a third degree, which is the writing, additional to math, language, and science. So many questionnaires that will build information in order to have information of different dimensions that we assess. And we also include, by means of a questionnaire, what's possible to do today in a large scale. But in terms of the social emotional aspect, I'm not going to go into many details, but we've got 3 skills and we've got 3 that are new. And I would like to mention this, not everything is evaluated, but it needs to be based on evidence, and we've got technical evidence, but also for public policies. Here, we define 2 new areas to be assessed during 2025, which is the school efficiency, which is something more individual, but also work in cooperation. So there are so many aspects that can be evaluated, but here we have a definition of the countries of the yes that will care about the individual development and the collective one. So I'm saying this because it also has to do with the decision making process in each one of the ministries. On this regard, our evaluation has a mean of 700. Some others that are in 250, 300. This is just going to have an agreement of what is going to be the standard deviation and the median. So just to show the group of information that was collected, and we tried not only to have the information of this score, but translate it into a more pedagogical information that has to do with the level of learning. It means that we can get connected with the skills and content that we want the students, the child may develop. Level 1 is the lower one, the highest one is level 4, and also another element that is linked to the 2030 agenda that allow us to identify in level 1 on a third degree and in a second degree on the sixth degree if students are compliant or not regarding the challenge of the 2030 agenda. Here we have a first element that is not only the score and their elements, but later on we will link this information that later on has to do with the evaluation in the groups of the region. In the case of the questionnaires, we've got some students and members of the family in different aspects that we defined. Here we have the battery of instruments. We've got the teachers and the members of the board, and also teachers in certain areas that has to do with it, and the school that we ask about this, about the principals and some teachers, and this information is being built with information of different audiences so that we can have information about it. So about the second session that has to do with certain elements with the design of instruments. First of all, I would like to take these three elements that are very important to build any sort of regional or national or subnational evaluation in a region, in a municipality or a state. That in our case, we want to measure the learning that may derive of a curriculum compared to the PISA or the OECD. And when we finish the school system, and then this is what Gladys mentioned, besides building this common syllabus to identify it in the case of teachers, we do believe, and this is not an opinion, will have more validity in this work that is very important. If we don't do that, we will be saving part of the important links of this work, which is what we should teach in each one of the classrooms. So we're talking about something that is in common regarding the whole realities of the region.
Second is to diminish and control the sources of error in the measurement of these learning. This will always exist in the standardized processes, but we have to have a technical work to be able to have the least amount and to be able to work so that we can have in the sources that we have the least amount of errors. And lastly, to favor or promote that the students can show what they know through the instruments with no bias. So here you have to build instruments so that the students with less abilities or intermediate or better abilities can then answer so that we can know what each student is capable of doing. And I insist these instruments that are not adequate to the adequated to the regions have less possibility of showing what a student can and cannot do in that direction. In our processes, I'm just simplifying here, but basically are these six. If we could say that from a large scale process or in hours, this is like the kitchen of ERCE work. And this is the mapping of all the different curriculum to be able to reach this common curriculum having to do with this. And this is where we work on the specifications table, which means that we have the mapping of the information to be able to build items having to do with these dominions, and then be able to reach or accomplish what we want to assess. This specification tables has to do with the elaboration of elements. So what this means is that if we wanted, for example, to talk about geometry and one of the domains or has to do with how much needs to be represented in the specifications tables, we build items or elements so that they can be within those dimensions. And after that elaboration of items or elements, we create a bank or a group of items that are going to be filling the specifications table. And with that, it defines the test that will respond to that specifications table. And I insist, therefore, the test or evaluation or assessment that is carried out, that when it is ensembled, when it is put together, you're going to which is based on the specifications table, that one that will be in common, the same for all of the different member countries. There is an iteration and a language adaptation of each one of the countries and specialists. And what does this mean? Most probable that a concept first is worked so an item has no bias. What does this mean? That it can be understood and not have something in favor or against a specific country due to the understanding of maybe some of them. So we have to control bias and have a bias against women or men, or maybe some that are in more rural areas. So when we reach this final exam or this final assessment, we have this language adaptation where it says maybe one word has a different name in a different country. It has a different word that is used. And so, but the main content is not altered. We just adjust to each of the different countries, and then that reaches the main ensemble. They're building all of this together. And this is more simplified, obviously. My colleagues are going to say this has to be working hard with each one of the teams and specialists to be able to build all of this route and the going back and forth. And this is an assessment that is a large scale one. So each one of these processes has to, and for us it's very important, within the technical area, and I would like to thank all of the member countries that we have been building this to be able to have these 3 pillars that place ERCE in a position that is global within our region, that complies with international standards, and has to do with the validity, trustworthiness, and impartiality. And any assessment this is key. I think this is the main guide for the development of any assessment or test in that line, and it refers to the evidence and the theory that supports all interpretation and use work that we want to give at this time. Therefore, this is property of the use of the measurement, not in particular the instrument, but you do have to work everything in together to be able to reach these assessments. The trust, being able, you have all the psychometric, it has to do with the different scores, and it has to do be with the consistency. So this can show higher levels of the work, so we can see it where it's trustworthy, it's reliable, and anything that is not reliable would then could reach a bad interpretation for different decisions. And that is why it is so important that we have these relevant criteria, and also impartiality, which has to do with what we were saying, that the instruments do not have any bias. Since this is necessary to be reviewed, you have to go through certain work that allows that each item can end up in how a student has an ability that is examined, and not other parameters that we want to assess. So I insist these are central elements in our assessment, and we would also like to work with the countries and be building with this criteria, with this technical work. We have also a committee that reviews everything that we build and allows us to build our instrument with more validity, because these are degrees, and also different reliability and impartiality that allows us to be within international standards. And to end, also this work regarding what we build in our process. When reading, we only have multiple choice, math and science. We have multiple choice and also open questions or brief construction. And in writing, we have a stimulus. So we ask the student to be able to produce based on what we are asking. This is the type of questions and the characteristics that we use in our assessments. And to be able to the final put together of all of this, after all this process of the analysis of the curriculum that we have talked about previously, the specifications table and the items that are in the bank, and we also put all of this together, and we have all the different language adaptation, and then there are considerations for this ensemble, and we see the result, and it has to do with the objective population. And we also see the different items, the particularities that they have a basic unit, and that they can be within the specific axis, and also the property of difficulties. And these are also psychometric measurements, that some are easier or harder. And I can later share with you regarding international studies that value that for Latin America and Caribbean is very informative for the improvement and also the varied uses within the measurement. And also blocks that can be built within our 3, these blocks allow how we can organize this information. That also has to do with checking how they are responding in order to be able to have blocks that are the same, that allow comparability, and new ones that allow to be able to have higher information, more information. So this is basically the way we build. I'm not going to go into all the details. The last structure of 2025, where you have blocks that are new, older blocks, to then maintain comparability in the different stages of the process. So this was the second module, and I wanted to be able to give you information of how we build the instruments, the different stages, the need of having standards for the tests that require a series of technical work to be able to accomplish the validity, reliability, and impartiality, which is very important, and the coordination, at least with the national teams for the construction. And also on one hand, because the national teams also build items that are validated in terms of information. And just to comment as well, in this cycle, we built 741 items or elements, and at least 1/5 one was built. I mean, a fourth was built by the countries or constructed by the countries, and the rest that has been piloted is around 2/3, and to be able to build these items for the specifications table. So that would be what I have for today, Mar, regarding this information on how we build, the importance of having these technical processes. And there's a lot of information that is technical here that works with the national teams, and that some know more or less, but the importance of ensuring processes that are technical, that allow validity, reliability, and impartiality, so that the test or the assessment can then help make decisions based on what is generated and not have technical difficulties that generate wrong interpretations or wrong decisions based on the information that has been generated. So we would like to take advantage that Nora is back on so that she can share with us the experience of the context and the co-construction of these instruments. Nora, I don't know if you're here. I think I saw you. Here we go. Go ahead, Nora. Yes, what I had said previously, I had said, well, that the assessment team of the Ministry of Education is highly involved in this training and creation of capabilities from ERCE has been key for us because national assessments, we apply them even with the methodology of ERCE, thanks to this process of training. And regarding the curriculum, it has allowed us to make adjustments to the curriculum. We have received that report for Nicaragua, and we immediately started working to make the adjustments and to be able to improve our curriculum. In fact, we are in that process of updating. So we find that our curriculum had certain things that needed to be, that were lacking, and we have been completing it. On the other hand, in the process of the tests, the processes for that, and it has allowed us to have the contextualization of these tests in the language part especially. And on the other hand, with results from this, we now have a process of the return of the results, which takes us to be able to work with the teachers of the country through the different encounters that we have for learning, to be able to carry out workshops, teacher training, especially in those areas where we see that there is need to be able to reinforce training for teachers in writing, reading, math as well, and the elaboration of material so that the teachers can work and reinforce that part of the creation of the training and the capability of competences for our students. So we consider that in the case of Nicaragua, as I have also heard from other countries, ERCE has been a great contribution, not only due to the results of the test, but also through the whole process that is carried out and that gives us results that are useful for us to be able to improve our quality. Thank you. No problem. Thank you very much, Nora. We would also like to ask all of you who are here present today, what has the largest challenge been, the constant challenge that you have been faced with in the development of the instruments? Maybe somebody would like to share with us where have you placed the emphasis? It would be interesting to notice also, we know that we have different roles from the Caribbean, many curriculum from Blobet officers, and maybe you can share with us how you take on those challenges of having to do with the curricular analysis, alignment of the instruments of the different assessments that you have in the region. It would be very interesting to know about that. I don't know if somebody would like to share with us a little bit about this. And I'm going here now to ask Jason Douglas from Grenada. I don't know if you are here. We know that you have been coming forward in many processes, and it would be interesting to know the perspective of your country regarding these challenges. See if Douglas maybe was able to listen to hear us. It seems no. Okay, no problem. I don't know if any country would like to ask any other question to the countries that have been implementing GESE. Also, the conversation is very open to ask open questions. What has worked? What has not worked? What particularities have you had to deal with in your what every country has its own details, its own conclusions. It seems like everybody's a little bit shy today. What other question can we ask so that we can incentivize that those can talk about those things that go well, yet those things that haven't worked out so well as well? Well, I think we have been going forward with the different countries to be able to create technical capabilities in particular. And in our index, socioeconomical index, we had to reorganize the measurement for 2019. And afterwards, we passed it through an expert committee, ours and from the World Bank and OECD, and we were capable of including improvements. That's on one hand. I would say that maybe due to what Nora was saying, the importance of not only carrying out assessments, but also looking at the technical standards that are necessary to be able to build them. I think this has been a process, at least in our side. To be honest, we cannot hook on to ERCE, which was the first study, because we were not capable of building the technical equality or comparability. We have it only from SERCE. Why is it not comparable from the beginning? Because we did not have the being able to fulfill this technical issues to be able to compare and to ensure instruments that would have high international standards of validity, reliability, and impartiality. And I would like to directly say that I think this also has to be a conversation in each one of the countries. It's not enough to just have national assessments, whether they be like a more of a census type or sample, but we have to have a technical evaluation to ensure that element so that later this information is valid and it can be used. And I think that from what Nora is saying, and the other focus of working the development and capabilities, we think it is a pillar that is very important, that helps the countries to be able to go forward in that direction. Perfect. Carlos, let's go to the third module then. Okay, here we go to the third module so we can keep going forward. And I apologize if it's a little bit fast, there is a lot of information, but regarding the request of the team and SUMMA, that this is very important for you as a KIX network. There are countries who know about this, yet there are also new countries from Central America that we have not worked with. And we believe this is a great opportunity and that it can help be a contribution for you in the contribution for you in your different countries. So now we are going on to number 3, the third module. Then we had the GESE through the ERCE with its main instrument and the main process of the curricular analysis. And that is what we use to build all the process. The second one, we just saw the different stages of instrument construction and the processes or certain criteria that allow us to ensure the technical area of this construction. And also now on the third point, we are going to talk regarding the size of this event of deciphering the data. And here we are going to use the use micro in the micro. This is a picture of me. No, it's not. This is a picture of a child who has a suit on that is very big on him. And the first thing I would like to say is that not all assessment is useful for any decision. And here it's very important to say that you require instruments that are summative, those that have to do with diagnosis or intermediate. You needed training instruments within the classroom. And all of this is nationally, sub-regionally, and also in the level of each school. Each school carries out assessments that are summative at the end of a semester, or they have assessments that are more diagnostic at the beginning of the year. And they also have formation or formative assessments, but not all of them is useful for any decision. And this also depends on its use. And this is the first thing I would like to highlight regarding the need of being able to broaden the use in the school, not only as a Ministry of Education, but also in the different schools and in their different levels. Second, the instruments that we carry out have to be at the service of the key people. If we stay only in the numbers, but it doesn't help those who make decisions or the Ministry of Education or those, in other words, the teachers to be able to make better decisions or improve, then it's not fulfilling its purpose. Our instruments have to say, I was saying it in module 2, they have to have a technical assurance, certain psychometrical elements, but they have to be at the service in the end of the decision makers in the different levels. And third, I think it's very important to say, how do we have information for the decisions? Note I was saying this, the curricular analysis is useful because if I carry out a modification of curriculum based on evidence, I would like to say I would like to improve in fundamental abilities. This information, national or international, is also can be used for us to be able to know the level of learning of the children. So if I want to know where I'm going, if my objective in the curriculum to be learning, if I need to know where I am, then I need to have an assessment or evaluation to see where the learning of the children is, and that will allow us to mobilize the conversation of improvement to be able to keep going.
Punto a propósito de esta presentación o
Because of this presentation of this section, which is number 3, about how do we see and how we are able to have useful information for the decision-making process. And with that, we can move forward into a broader system. This is at a country level, but also at the level of the educational centers, that they shouldn't be only in the assessment, in the grade, and it has different names in different countries, but also we need to have a summative assessment when we finish a period or a lesson. And maybe we can have also affirmative and maybe and a more formative one that has to do with taking a look on a daily basis or week after week, how they are progressing. And maybe we can mobilize the conversation of the learning. Alex Granados mentioned this. The situation during the pandemic affected the group, but also the system of evaluation. Many of them were stopped and then they started all over again. And I'm saying this because when we think about the focus of our regional study, we have also tried to have information for different audiences, for different users and different audiences. But because of the headline of this meeting is how do we move forward to translate, and for to translate we need to have a better actions in the implementation of the improvements. So therefore, how do we generate a synergy, how this is going to add it to the training, to the use of resources, to the programs, to the curriculum, and as El Salvador said, to the programs at a classroom level. So we need to have a first element. And I just want to say that not everything works for everything. And when we take into account everything, including teachers, that's very important. And also to have this complexity idea of the school system in the work that we are doing and with this evaluation. I would like to bring to this conversation 4 studies that we have been a counterpart of them in the use of the standardized tests, in the use of the system of information, in the improvement of learning, and in the use of the result for the educational planning. I brought this because there is evidence that is saying that we are generating information, but that information is not connected to the action. It means that so many times we don't have a theory of action. What does it mean? When we generate the information, which is going to be the conversation for the actions that we need to do. And here we have several cases between 3 to 7 countries that were analyzed with a more regional perspective in 2024 of 2022, 21, I'm sorry. And I think that they gave us some elements to tell us that there is a complication. It's not enough to have information, but the information should be able to mobilize the different decision makings. And there is some interference, yes, of course, but not every sort of decision will help us for every decision making. This sample at a regional level, if I am the master of a school center and I want to work with my student, that will contribute information, but not as per children about what I need to improve. There are certain elements that are worth, but for their purpose is not being a real input. I would like to bring to the conversation that we've got a generic and we've got something that is located, that sometimes we say that this is going to be worth for the strategic planning. And sometimes we've got interference and we've got different uses, whether it is for the curriculum changes to identify the problem, to generate capacities and others, to evaluate, to certify, to organize, or to have information according their performance. But later on, when we check if this really happened, we are not doing that. This is a study in itself. Because of the time, I cannot get into this information, but I would like to give you the link to these 4 studies that I totally think that are very important. But I just want to mention these 4 elements. It's not enough to have the information. Second, with the need of having a theory of action based on the information, what are the actions that we're going to be working. Third, the need of getting connected with the policies, but also with the different levels, thinking about of the micro and macro levels. And third and fourth, the need of being explicit about it, because so many times we say that it exists, but it doesn't happen in reality. In our case, in ERCE, with its main study, which is ERCE, what we are establishing is to have an influence on the different decision makers to diversify the audience. a little bit of what Gladys said to get connected to the national teams, because they are the ones that can talk to the planning and Nora leads the planning, and she has more possibility of having an influence than in the area, the action of the improvement can move forward in different areas, and also to have an example of national aspect and information that is reported through the web. And here we have 4 studies that appear, and we presented in a preliminary manner with the ministers, and that has to do with the teachers with the S29 that provides more information, not only in the learning experience, but about the teachers for each one of the regions, and analysis of the priorities and analysis of the impact of the pandemic based on national assessment, and another view, and that was our contribution that has to do with PISA. But by trying to generate information, this is published at our website, and also we would like to share this information with you in the next days. Our focus has been like going beyond the intermediaries and see how the Ministry of Education will use this for the action of improvement and intermediaries in terms of the geographic localization. And in on that regard, we just wanted to connect that with the pedagogical action through the means of learning and the contribution for teaching. It means that in terms of the mistakes of the children, we would like to provide pedagogical information that could be effective to mobilize children in terms of content and skills. This disposition can be downloaded from our website, the documents about how the levels will set a certain operation or will implement, so that a teacher or educational center can know and can be of help on that regard. And also the support of the focus, because one of my obsessions of not just having the information, but being able to use this information, and that will help teachers for the actions. And this is not only for math and science and language, and for the first time, the social emotional aspect. We're going to launch this on July the 9th with exercises so that teachers can implement this. This is the first approach, and hopefully the country, they already know this, but in a more decisive manner, we can use this for the pedagogical use. And the same thing that has to do with the contribution of the math, language, and science teaching, to help teachers to know where was the mistake, and the students will have a methodology to go from one level to the next one in terms of the information. That is in terms of the most intermediate manner to connect the national aspect and the pedagogical ones. And I really appreciate what you're doing in El Salvador and in other countries as well. What we're trying to do is to be part of the evaluation system with other ministry, with Panama international system of evaluation, to support it and to continue implementing, to have a pilot of those schools. And then we need to see how we're going to implement those systems in the country. This pilot of ERCE schools, this is an instrument for diagnosis at the beginning of the year regarding the skills, what enabled the girl or the boy to be developed, and without the teachers can adequate the teaching experience. This is not a level downwards, but if we have students on the second level or in the first level, or if they are not qualifying, so children cannot work on a text in this case of trying to understand a text if they don't have the coding. And this is linked to the Agenda 2030, the learning above level 1, in this case level 2, and what is expected at the end of the 3rd grade. And in the end, this is a more informative conversation when we promote the autonomy and feedback. And last but not least, In the second module, we checked the importance of having items for the different progressions of students regarding their skills. To answer to this, well, he will have an international research published at a global level that compared with other evaluations. The ERCE is informative in the complete distribution of the students in Latin America and the Caribbean, which allowed that at the moment of having this evaluation with a context of the performance, we can provide an idea of our students and what for to generate measurements and everything based on this evidence. So this is something that is in progress. Of course, there is a topic that is still pending at a world level with some piece evaluations and with all evaluations and with the national evaluations as well. And what I want to say is what we have done, but also to take a look at the evidence. So based on these, we can take the best out of these regarding what each of the country is doing. Carlos, thank you very much. We know that OX has lots of learning experiences that we share. Jermaine, are you there? Maybe you can give us some key learnings that from the regions you have had in the use of evaluation, both in the micro and micro. Jermaine, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I was actually trying to shift through my various
Wonderful.
screens and monitors. So, all right. So thanks, Ma, and very happy to be in this conversation today. We're actually quite focused on curriculum, instruction and assessment, excuse me, at the OECS. Some of you may know of the Pearl program and the impact this should have on the education sector in the region. Now, some time ago, and I'm going to try to share my screen very quickly, hopefully I will not take too long. We did present a bit on the context of what we're doing and how that would have an impact on assessments in the region. So our focus is really to try, or our goal, I should say, is to really employ innovative practices in assessments in schools, because you can do a lot at the country, at the national level for national assessments, but then what really matters is what the teacher and the learner are doing in the classroom, how they interact, and how that results in improved performance for the learner, and in fact, making sure that learning takes place. But of course, within our region, we are small island developing states, and of course, to improve assessment practices, that is just fraught with challenges. We have a lot of teachers who need better training, who need continuous professional development. And we also have a context where I think we did explain at our last presentation that there are some structural issues as well. The data culture, how schools take ownership for the processes with respect to data, what role data plays in decision making, and of course, in general, the lack of resources. So these are some major issues. And where we are at right now, we're looking at, of course, how do we start to address some of these challenges, okay? And specifically, we want to focus on the school level. So we're looking at our context as being both the context and the challenge. It is what we have to address. So with respect to that of teacher development, which I spoke of earlier, or the need to train people, we definitely think we need to do a bit more with our professional development programs from the inception, from pre-teaching service that has to be improved. But also we think there's an opportunity to include mentors to support teachers. Specifically, there are lots of teachers who are maybe retired and can contribute from their vast knowledge, experience, what they have been doing to support assessment, both assessment and instruction in schools. We think it's important also to try to develop more collaborative learning communities. And we are a bit behind on that, but it is something we're trying to develop through our digital curriculum, where professionals, teachers, etc., can learn from each other in terms of what strategies are best to employ. In terms of data utilization, we realize, as I think another presenter mentioned earlier, the data exists many times, but it is not being used. And we expect that that is often because the data may not exist in a format that is easily digestible, or it may also be because that our teachers don't necessarily think on a daily basis, how can they use that data to inform the practice as we go on? So we want to help by supporting the implementation of EMIS systems. And in the region, we're actually working on developing a regional EMIS, which is really going to help to serve hopefully all the schools in the region, so that the collection of data, the processing of data, all of that could be handled more seamlessly. This is very important. Also, when we think about training on data literacy, we think it's important that teachers understand that value of data, and they also are better enabled in terms of how to use it. We've had, I think over the last 5 months or so, maybe not so much, but since the UIS conference, which some of you may have attended in Paris, there has been, I think, a restart of interest in terms of how can we improve data collection on a country and a regional level. And we recognize that at the school level, we need to do more. And so it's important for the same teachers who are involved in inputting, collecting the data at the ground level, that they understand that value of data. And that is also part of data literacy. So we've been in communications with UIS to see how we could actually bring some of that knowledge to the school level, to the teacher level, so they understand when they're asked to fill up a form or complete a survey, the importance of that. Of course, we think UIS can give us some support with some of these workshops, and even just snippets on how these, how they can improve in terms of the data proficiency. We do need to do more in terms of developing this data culture. We talk about it a lot. Sometimes I don't think we understand exactly how we go about creating this data culture, but a lot of that stems from leadership. And so some of the leadership programs or courses we've developed under our professional development strategy for school leaders, we're looking to incorporate data-driven decision-making as part of that. So school leaders, principals, understand, value the importance of data, and they can also advocate among their staff, the teachers, why this should be done. It's also important when you think about incentivizing data utilization, we should think about changing what the assessment is measuring. So by default, in our traditional setup, we're measuring, for example, how many passed, how many made the minimum standard, or how many, what is the mean, etc. But we think it's more important, schools should focus more on by how much did each learner improve. So if that is done, we think that gives a better incentive to both the teacher and the learners let me just rephrase that. That gives them better incentive for making that effort for improving. Because at the end of the day, the test may be a certain level that not every learner can reach. But of course, if each learner can see that they're improving, that is motivating. And certainly engaging stakeholders is important as in everything else. But the stakeholder, which is the most important here, we believe, is the student. And we need to work to make the learners understand how they themselves can also track their own progress. This is important at the school level. I don't want to be too long. I know the time is short, so I just want to make a few more points. It may help if we are able to develop some data-driven decision-making frameworks for schools in terms of how assessment data connects to making decisions about the schools, maybe how we can differentiate, for example, different types of learners, what strategies work best for them, maybe even what time of day an assessment should take place. Whatever the case is, whatever the decision that is made, it should be informed by the data being provided from the assessment. So this is an extension of utilizing assessment data. We think it's important for staff, learners, teachers rather, to sit down and review data. We make a big fuss every year about the test results, for example, but we don't know that schools are necessarily sitting down, reviewing, reflecting on the data that they're receiving and whether that is in fact informing anything that they're doing in the following semester or the following year with this child or the other. So that is important, and that has to be, we think, part of staff meetings and even retreats for teachers. Okay, and of course, we must link the data to instructional practice. Otherwise, what really is the point of doing it? Certainly, we need to provide more resources to make those innovative practices in assessment possible. Of course, we're talking about technological investments in many cases, the computers, internet, software, what have you. But support staff is also a critical one we sometimes overlook. Many cases, we don't have the assistant teachers or maybe even older learners who can give us support in an assessment scenario. That is important because many times the classroom can be quite, large, 30, 35 students to one teacher. And so this teacher is not able to give that kind of feedback or attention and support. So that is also important. Of course, resource allocations, we understand that the public purse can never do enough. And there's also opportunity for public-private sector partnership where that is concerned. Finally, I would say one of the things we need to do better is to start and to try. And if you try something, it works, we can then scale it out. So certainly there's opportunity for trying or piloting small scale assessment strategies, see if they work at the classroom level, see if they work at the district level, and then we take the best practices or we take what's good from it, modify it, and scale that out to the rest of the country or the district, as the case may be. So, in conclusion, we do think what's really important for us to be able to do is to improve the environment in schools so that you can have innovation, not just innovation in assessment, but innovation in general. But of course, for us to be able to do that, we do need to overcome a lot of these challenges we have associated with assessment, with instruction, and hopefully what I've presented so far gives us some ideas as to some of the things we can do, and we're hoping to be able to achieve. Thank you very much, Ma, and let me know if anyone has any questions.
Muchas gracias, Jermaine. Con certeza,
Yes.
algunas de las reflexiones que nos has planteado, Carlos, en el siguiente módulo las va a
Thank you
retomar.
for what you have shared. Carlos is going to share some of this as well, and we are going to discuss this. Carlos, I would like to open the word if you wanted to talk about some of the ideas of Jermaine as well. Yes, I think the conversation is very positive and the proposals, especially regarding that the information be useful for decision making and the importance of being closer to the school communities to promote action of improvement and changes. I really like this scaling part and what he said regarding generating use of this information so that based on the use, different directives or teachers or maybe even the same students and families can finally get to know their learning to be able to mobilize action for improvement. There are many great elements, but I think it allows, as I insist, that it is not enough just with the assessment itself, but the importance of building systems that allow us to use the information for improvement, for innovation, for change in that direction. Great case. Thank you. Congratulations. And it's great to get to know more and get deeper into that.
Dale,
Thank you
Carlos,
very much.
al último módulo de
So
fortalecimiento.
now we have the last module. of strengthening. Can you see this?
Todavía no en full ahí sí.
There we go, yes. The last module, we were talking through even as you place lines with the experience that is more local, subnational, subregional, I think it's important. And this last part of the presentation that we have been sharing, the importance of development of capabilities. So as we were saying, as Jermaine was saying, it can be used in the countries, at the level of each one of the countries in the Ministry of Education, and also in each school. Our focus has to do not only that you implement, but that we can be co-participants and we can cooperate in the governance and participation. And Gladys was saying at the beginning, also with Nora, and I think that is very helpful, that in the implementation of this not be just in the regional, but also be a synergy of the work that is being carried on in each one of the countries. This is to be able, is connected with the training of each one of the levels and each one of the phases. And here it's more visual. At the top, you can see once again how the different processes, the larger ones of this process of construction implementation, and you have the different workshops, you have the sampling, the elements and the capture of data, the open questions, psychometric analysis, raising and data, correction of open questions, and then to end up with the analysis. This is all done according to what is being implemented in the main study of ERCE, which allows them to have a good implementation. On the other hand, support of local capabilities. There is just one thing in each one of the areas, because as we were talking in module 2, for the insurance of the technical part, we do necessarily require building capabilities in each one of the processes that are implemented and that is released by the national teams. And here is a sample of what is built with the in each one of these stages to be able to ensure and build and to have synergy regarding all of this. Therefore, one of the work lines with the South-South cooperation is at the different stages of the process can then have the development of capabilities to ensure the quality, coordination, and good implementation of the study. And going to the construction of capabilities in these 30 years with the ERCE, there is a central work line that has to do with the development of capabilities. And lastly, with some challenges, we need to count on more information because, on average, 1 of every 2 or 4 of every 10 children in the 19 countries that participate in the ERCE, in Latin America mainly, except for, and I apologize once again to the Caribbean who are not a part of this, there is a low level and there's a different distribution of students which requires different support in each classroom. And I think that this information gives us this data, and we need more information for better decision making. Second, and regarding this workshop, that how do we translate this into better improvement? We have to connect. There are systemic interferences and educational policies that require action with a connection between evidence and the different units to be able to carry out action. So they require a more decided action and in systemic work, which is central in the Ministry of Education and in the other areas. We need to broaden the systems of assessment, not only regional, and we also need to have information by schools, for example, and also in the same school where they can manage their own information. And regarding our steps, it has to do with continuing with the technical formation, this theory that I was telling you about, also the work of new dimensions regarding the 2030 agenda and having to do with health and among other things, and also how we can contribute to the regional agenda, understanding how those who are already a part. And my main reflection then would be that the instruments have to be under better action. It's not enough, but we need to see where we can improve. And those of us who are working in assessment, we require more than looking at the teacher. And some colleagues were saying that what is the student learning, to be able to support them in a better way, more than the adults talking, more than what the students are talking, or more than what talking about an activity or homework, but regarding learning itself. Why? And I have this Mafalda strip. This is from Argentina. I enjoy her quite a bit. That a teacher asked the students that whoever did not understand, raise your hand. And Manolito raises his hands, and after a whole school year, which could be June or March, depending on the children, after a lot of actions, respond, and they don't respond to anything. On the strip, it says, whoever did not understand, please raise your hand. And Manolito raised his hands and says that I have not understood anything since March. So we can see, and we can go in that direction. So this is the end of the last module. So now we can open up to any other conversation if you would like. And I hope I have been a contribution, and in the cases with the colleagues as well. Thank you, Carlos, for everything you have shared with us. And we're a little bit on reaching the time. So for those of you who can be with us these last 10 minutes, and I would like to quickly also go to the closing reflections that Nicola from Jamaica, UNESCO Jamaica, is going to share with us, also from the Ministry of El Salvador. They would also like to share some reflections regarding the strengthening of the institution that they have been coming forward with. Juan Carlos, if you would like, the floor is yours. And I'm so glad also that we have a participant, a representative from Haiti. And it would be very interesting to get to know the challenges after all of this, to be able to know the challenges that they are dealing with. Juan Carlos, are you there? We would like to hear regarding the reflections of this institutional strengthening, and then we would go on to the next person. I cannot quite pronounce their last name, but Juan Carlos, are you here? It seems he does not hear us. Well, let's see if he can connect. Raul, can you help me pronounce the last name of our representative from Haiti? Bursico.
Ah ben désolé, j'ai pas mis la vidéo. Bon, désolé. Une prochaine fois.
I do not have a camera, therefore I thank you very much to KIX LAC for inviting the Haiti team to participate in this workshop, which I found to be very interesting. I was able to learn many things that are extremely important for Haiti. And I would like to share with you quickly the fact that we are carrying out a curricular update within the or a reform in the ministry that was validated. And in spite of all of the safety problems that do not allow schools to function normally, and with the political stability, we are finding the possibility of naming the prime minister. And we hope that with all of this reinforcement, nationally, Haiti will be able to work better and have better days coming forward. the tools that have been presented in education are not within our curricular framework and things that have been used for us. So the question I have is how this kind of tool can help, or this kind of framework can help a system that is starting with a whole reform, adding new subjects and adapting to this world reality to be able to ensure that students are not basically just restricted to the world, to the universe, but that they can have competencies that allow them to open up in Haiti as well as to the whole world. How this tools, how can we use them in Haiti, and how can you help us to go forward in curricular reforms?
Un saludo relevante al colega de Haití.
I would like to greet our colleague from Haiti, and it's very interesting what you are stating and the effort that you're carrying out to reactivate the system and this curricular reform validated in spite of all of the difficulties that you mentioned. The first thing I would like to say is that the efforts that you are carrying out are of key to be able to help the school system work, and also to generate these tools so that it can be starting to function. I think it can generate evidence for processes of curricular reform and improvement and support that is more substantial. You also need to count on certain basic conditions, like, for example, information of the school system, which I'm pretty sure you're building, having to do with basic issues, institutions, teachers, students, so that in the implementation of assessments of this kind, you require to start off to initiate this type of operation. But I was saying, I think there are three that would be contribute quite a bit that in what you are doing. I would dare say three things: that you have to have initial information of how things are working. Second, you require a national team as a counterpart of a project like this one. I say that due to experience from Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, or others, you require a team that can be building the capabilities and that they can implement project of this kind. Therefore, that is key, not only in that all of us can help, but that you have a central team that can be trained and be a part of this work. And third, I think that it goes through what we have all tried to indicate, that after implementing an assessment, it's not enough just to have it, but how can you connect with the different authorities to be able to carry out actions, politically speaking, so that this information can be used to make decisions? They said that in Nicaragua and El Salvador, some of the cases, when they connect and use this information, there are virtuous cycles that allow them to go forward. So those three elements, I would suggest humbly, that could contribute in what you are doing. What you are doing is a base, and it's very key. It's neuralgic. And as I was saying, it requires initial base information to be able to implement a team that be a counterpart for the implementation, and third, political connections so that it can be something in this, so that it can help in the plan that is being developed. I hope I can contribute to what you were mentioning.
Merci beaucoup, effectivement. Donc, ce sont des réponses qui sont satisfaisantes. Et puis, j'ai bien pris note du fait
These
qu'il faut
are
appliquer quand même
satisfactory
la pratique à un moment
answers,
donné
and
pour
take into
s'assurer que
consideration that we do
l'effort de
require
la
political
évaluation
support
puisse
at certain
justement
moments to
permettre
ensure
de
that the
s'assurer
objective
que tout ce qui
can
sera
allow that
entendu
from
se
that
réalise réellement et
assessment
puis en même temps que ça
we
puisse
can
permettre
work with the
l'implémentation
curricular
comme vous
reform,
mentionnez,
and
d'un
so
évaluateur
that it
qui
can
puisse
allow
s'assurer
us
d'avancer dans le
to
bon
have
sens.
an implementation that is always under assessment and evaluation to ensure the process, the advancement in the process. Thank you very much. for your intervention. For us, it's always very important to have the voice of Haiti in all of this process. I will now like Juan Carlos to share with us in a concise way the experience of El Salvador and all the technical and in the different areas having to implement these process of assessment. Good morning, and I would like to greet all of you. The experience of El Salvador is reduced precisely and the strengthening of technical capabilities of the National Direction of Assessment, that through what is happening now is key. I feel very proud of the personnel that we count on. We have personnel that is highly technical, and with the support of spaces like KIX LAC and other collaborations that we have had, we have been becoming more technical and more professional. And that was the first step that we had to give as a country to be able to have an assessment system that is robust. And thanks to this team, to this new setup that we have developed, we have been able to have a system of evaluation that is based on national evaluations as well as international ones. And what I would like to highlight is that in spite of the pandemic, the assessments in El Salvador did not stop. This team had the capability of implementing through in a computer system and in other instances, for example, the Secretariat of Innovation, they were able to carry out these online, and this allowed us to have updated information regarding our students and also to be able to the test that we said that is called Avanzo. We also implemented diagnosis, knowing my accomplishments that are the column, the backbone of our system.
Únicamente a los estudiantes que finalizan la educación media. Sin embargo, nuestras pruebas
This is only
conociendo
for the students that will finish
However, the
their
test,
secondary
knowing my
education.
advancements that I have since third grade up until the last year of high school.
Participan aproximadamente el 70% de los estudiantes, lo que nos permite tener información confiable sobre las situaciones de la.
This would allow us to have continuous information and the social and emotional aspect that are taking place in our classrooms. And of course, the other important element is the decision of the country to participate in a standardized test at an international level, ERCE and PITSA. And the result that we have had as a country will show us the situation that in this administration we have found. But that information, and here comes the next element that is key, is how do we use that information for the decision making and also to create some public policies that will improve the cognitive, social, emotional level on the learning experiences in our students. So as I said, we have been able to reinforce and our technical teams, and now we are moving forward by reinforcing the institutionality, so other aspects that are involved, everybody could understand, the parents, they can help us to set a culture of evaluation that we will have the objectives and also as the objective of knowledge. And that is an idea, that is a paradigm that we should change, especially for students and the head of households. And what I need to know is how much they have learned about a certain topics in the curriculum to make decisions and to work in those areas of knowledge that are still low. And of course, we need to continue improving by improving our infrastructure so that we can continue increasing the coverage of the online evaluations that we do in the government of El Salvador. we have had important investment at an educational level, and one of those that in the midterm, the totality of educational centers in the country will have access to internet, but a high quality internet where each student will have available a certain broadband and they are not using the little bit of broadband that they may have. That element, when it is installed, that is going to take us in the national areas of assessment because we will have a broader coverage and that would allow us to be more efficient in the efficient application of tests and also in the efficient distribution of the results. So in our very own experience, this is of a huge satisfaction. There is a long way to go that we need to continue working, and I would like to thank everybody at KIX LAC, Mar, Raúl, and some other people that we have been working with more directly, because I believe that it is also good to know the good experiences of other places, but also those areas in which we saw certain errors, and with that we can take some action. So once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I really hope that I can count with the cooperation of the KIX LAC team. Juan Carlos, thank you very much. We still have a couple of questions that I promise you, Ramon and Elvira, that we're going to answer to the Eva. I'm sorry, I'm going to be behind Carlos, so we'll get an answer. But because of the time, I would like to give the floor to Nicola Vela, who is going to give us some closing words. Nicola Vela is a senior specialist in education. She is the chief of education in UNESCO Kingston, and also she has been working in education, demography, and the political analysis of educational policies. She has a PhD in demography and also in population, and she has been working in the Office of UNESCO in the Caribbean, and she also managed the sectoral areas. She has been working over 20 years in this area at a national and regional level. Nicole, I'm sorry, I would like to give you the floor, and also thank you very much for the closing remarks. Let's see if she's around. Here she is. Nicole. Nicole, are you there?
Nicole, are you there? La vemos conectada. Oh,
I can
here.
see that she is connected.
Yes. Veamos unos segundos.
Just a second.
Hello.
Hello, Nicole.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So I was mute. So sorry for that. So I don't know whether I can also. Yeah, you can see me now.
We can see you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. And I have a special greeting to the national team from the Caribbean that are also in attendance. So it's really good to see that. I would like to thank the KIX LAC SUMMA team for having invited me to provide these closing remarks. I think it's really important for the Caribbean to be present in this kind of regional settings. Please note that my remarks are linked to the use that UNESCO is making of data on learning and outcomes, in particular from the large-scale learning assessment, for the purpose of monitoring and reporting on the SDG 4. So what I will be saying here applies to that. It does not mean that the data on learning outcomes are not available at the country levels when it comes to national learning assessment. So to start with, I think it's important for all of us to bear in mind. I think it's also the aim of this important meeting today. The fact that evidence is really key to inform policies, and it's really important for countries to have this evaluation culture in their education processes and education planning, because without data, without evidence, it's really difficult to provide the kind of policies that are needed in countries. So it's just like in medicine. If you don't have a diagnosis, so you cannot know where to start with when someone comes to a doctor to look for treatment. So it's important to do a kind of diagnosis of the situation. So learning and learning outcomes are at the core of the Education 2030 agenda, while the SDG 4 first aims to ensure that all children and youth have access to, participate, and complete free primary and secondary education. Its first target stressed that the education they are provided with must be inclusive, equitable, and of quality, leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. Two indicators are part of the monitoring frameworks that is used to monitor progress towards SDG 4. The first of these indicators on learning outcomes, it's the proportion of children and young people achieving minimum proficiency in free education stage in grade 2 or 3 at the end of primary and at the end of lower secondary. The second indicators of target 4.1 shed light on the existence and on whether there are any kind of national representative learning assessment at this free stage of education cycle. The focus on learning outcomes comes from the recognition that the world is experiencing a learning crisis, as many of those in school are not learning, are not acquiring basic knowledge and skills, let alone those who are out of school. To translate learning assessment into action and then improve the quality of learning and the quality of learning outcomes, it's of course essential to have relevant information and evidence of the state of students' learning in order to effectively inform policies. Yet, compared to access and completion statistics data on learning outcomes are far less readily available. For instance, at the global level, 4 in 5 countries do not have any data for learning in grades 2 and 3. Roughly 1 in 2 countries do not have any data for learning at the end of primary and lower secondary education. Trends data in learning outcomes are even more scarce. The Caribbean regions face considerable challenges in data availability and the production of disaggregate comparable statistics. This hampers the ability to perform comprehensive analysis and track progress accurately, especially for subpopulations of students. In terms of SDG 4 indicators from administrative data source by region, the data coverage among Caribbean countries is markedly lower, both as compared with Latin America and, of course, as compared with the global level. The 2022 Global Education Monitoring Report highlights a concerning trend. 41% of countries accounting for 30% of the global population have not conducted household surveys, or if done, have not disseminated the data publicly since 2015. It was said earlier in this meeting that it's not sufficient to collect data. It's equally important to make use of this data if the evidence is to inform policies. The Caribbean emerged as a sub-region with particularly low survey coverage rates. Within the time frame specified by the GEM report that was focused on Latin America and the Caribbean, this was the report published in 2021. Only Belize and Suriname had publicly available survey data. There is an urgent need to make progress in the realm of educational assessment and evaluation among Caribbean countries. With the exception of Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago that have participated in international assessment like PISA in 2022 for Jamaica and 2015 for Trinidad and Tobago, most Caribbean countries and territories do not engage in large-scale learning assessment, either at the regional level, at the LAC region, or at the international levels, which are pivotal for tracking, monitoring, and reporting on learning outcomes at the global level. Once again, this does not mean that there's no data on learning assessment and evaluation of learning in these countries. Most of them are part of the Caribbean Examination Council process and mechanism through which students' learning is assessed through certification, particularly at the end of secondary education. Currently, the UNESCO Institute for Statistics does not use the data coming from this KIX examination in the context of reporting on existing learning assessment or the anchoring exercise that the UI is doing, aiming at enhancing data availability in learning outcomes at a global level. The primary limitation here is that the KIX examination data or examination are designed primarily for certification at the end of secondary and do not align well with the SDG 4 monitoring framework, particularly in terms of learning levels and domains. The focus of KIX on secondary certification means that its framework and objectives differ significantly from those need for broader education assessment that inform the SDG 4 metrics. This is an issue that both UIS and KIX need to more closely consider and look at together for the way forward. Indeed, the Caribbean as a region cannot continue to be outside the global SDG 4 monitoring landscape, in particular with respect to learning outcomes. The region is the only one with no regional large-scale learning assessment, and where only, as I said before, a handful of countries participate in international assessment. This is an issue that needs to be addressed by encouraging Caribbean countries to participate in existing regional, it can be ERCE that was at the core of this meeting today, and or in international assessment, or to encourage this region to develop its own regional assessment. So I'm glad to see that our colleague German Anthony from OACS is in attendance. So however, all these come at a cost, as countries have to finance their participation in either regional or international assessment. In other regions, countries' participation is funded or financed by international organizations. However, most countries in the Caribbean are considered either as upper middle or high income countries, and thus are less likely to receive financial support, including from the Global Partnership for Education that is linked to the KIX exercise. The series of webinars organized by the KIX LAC, including on learning outcomes, opened a great window of opportunities to pledge for the participation of Caribbean countries in large-scale learning assessment, to push for such agenda and to finance it. Thank you for your attention. And I hope that this closing remark will feed in what I would like to see as the start to really make sure that Caribbean countries are also part of this international large-scale assessment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for your words. I think really important to make this happen. This bridge that we're building together with the Latin American and the Caribbean regions. Normally we say Latin America and the Caribbean as one region, but we know that there is diversity within, and we're bridging that, and of course we are learning from each other. We will end now. We would like to invite you all for turning on your cameras. Si pueden prender sus cámaras, por favor, para tomar una fotografía del grupo. Y ya con
Please
eso
turn your cameras on so we can take a group picture.
This workshop. Thank you so much, Carlos. Muchas gracias, Carlos Henríquez de UNESCO, del LLECE, por este significativo encuentro, y gracias a todos los
Thank you very
participantes.
much for this important event and all the participants. It is a pleasure to see some familiar faces and new faces as well. So it has been wonderful, the participation of everybody, and see you in the next days or weeks or months. So wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Abrazo a todas.
Bye-bye.
Saludos a
Thank you.
todas. Bye bye.
Well done, Rahul and team. Take care.
Muchas gracias, Jermaine. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Jermaine.
Ma. Much appreciated. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Mu-
Germain.
Muchas gracias a las intérpretes, como siempre, por su amabilidad.
Gracias a ustedes.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Gracias.
Adiós.
Las grabaciones, por favor.